Jonesy and Amanda.
Jam Nation.
Imagine not being able to speak in public, not being able to read or leave the house on your own. For women in Afghanistan, that's a reality under the new Taliban rule. To help us understand this situation better, we're joined by Ravina Shamdasani, a UN spokeswoman who has become a voice for the voiceless when it comes to the appalling state of women's rights in Afghanistan. Ravina, hello.
Hi, thanks for covering this important story.
Look, I've heard the stories along the years since the Taliban took over, but why has this ratcheted up? What's going on now?
Well, it's just going from bad to worse. If you're trying to make sense of it, there is no sense. Afghanistan is a place where 23 million people will require humanitarian assistance, and yet half of the population is being completely disempowered, not allowed to educate themselves. Even those who have been very well educated are not allowed to work and contribute to the economy. This new law is being presented as in line with Islamic values, but, Islamic scholars themselves are, to put it mildly, dubious about these claims. It really seems to be an entrenchment of power by the most radical of the Taliban.
And when Joe Biden got out of Afghanistan and left it to the Taliban said, "Oh no, we're the new Taliban. We're going to be a moderate Taliban." This is definitely not the case.
It's definitely not the case. Promises were made by them to, promote a more moderate kind of governance in line with Islamic values, but yet moderate. And we're seeing the exact opposite. First, it was secondary school education, university education. Then it was the right to work. And now we're seeing even just the right for women to speak in public being targeted. And of course, men are not being spared either. There are, many very repressive laws that impact on men as well. You have children who are being impacted, male and female. Female-headed households, for example. You can think about how women who were meant to support the elderly in their family, their extended families, their children, are no longer able to do that. So it's really having a huge impact on the entire economy and social structure in Afghanistan.
So what exactly are these new rules? Women can't speak in public, but what are the ones that are stopping women helping their elderly parents, etc.?
Well, women are not allowed to work either. Even women who actually work for the United Nations were not allowed to come to the office. So they're not allowed to be productive members of society and earn a living. And then you've got women who, were in political office, for example. Women are not allowed to hold political office anymore. Now you have women who, previously as well, there were rules imposing the wearing of the full burqa, meaning the face being covered as well. And this has now been enshrined in law by the de facto authorities. So the full burqa, cover from head to toe, including faces. There's a ban for transport providers on transporting women unless they're accompanied by a male relative. Think about when you need to rush a family member to the hospital. How are you going to do that if you don't have a male relative who can accompany you? And literally the prohibition of women's voices being heard in public at all.
Oh, it's so hard for us to understand that. How are women in Afghanistan dealing with these new laws? How do they find a place for the anger?
You can only imagine, can't you? I mean, I was there. I haven't been there in the past 2 years, but I was there right after the Taliban took over. And we met some of these women. And these are women who were mayors, who were doctors, who were, community activists. It shouldn't surprise you to hear that these were super articulate, super intelligent women who were there with solutions. They had very close contact with the people in their own communities, as, women tend to in many parts of the world. And they had solutions to offer. And again, this is a society which is broken. You have an economy which is not functioning, high level of humanitarian aid needed. And these women have been silenced now. They're not allowed to have a seat at the table. And I remember we asked them at the time, well, we're going to be meeting Taliban leaders. What do you want us to convey to them? And they said, we don't need your voices. We want our own voices to be heard. The only thing we want you to ask them is to give us a seat at the table so that we can join in trying to solve these problems.
And you wouldn't be able to go back there, would you?
I mean, the UN is present on the ground, but we have to work very carefully. We are engaging with the Taliban, actually, because, isolation, when you have no option, isolation is really not the best solution. You have to try to engage and try to influence even the little bit that you can.
Wow.
This society about 40, 50 years ago was quite was progressive. I've seen footage of the women at university wearing regular clothes, miniskirts even. Should we all, like looking at America's proposed reproductive laws under some of the Republicans, should this be a lesson that you can never assume that things are carved in stone?
You can never assume things are carved in stone, especially when it comes to women's rights. We've progressed so much, and it's amazing to look back a couple of decades and see how much women have been able to, it's taken for granted in most parts of the world that women will work, women go to universities. Many universities have more female students than they have male students. But if you look at the gender gap, it's very much still there. When I go to the UN for the General Assembly and I hear all the heads of state speaking, the vast majority of them are still men. Why is that? And then you look at places in the Western world as well, including the United States, including Europe, and you see the pushback on gender equality. You see sexual and reproductive rights that we were taking for granted being slowly taken away under the guise of family values movements, which of course have nothing to do with family values, but they're really about power play of the men who remain in power.
No. Well, Ravina, it's fascinating to talk to you. Ravina Shamdasani, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for covering the story.